What's up, Dub Nation? Rich with Let's Go Warriors back here again. Today, I want to talk about an alternative way of interpreting Klay's current contract situation. So let's pull up the back screen and let's get started here. I want to start off with 2 videos ago, right? When I introduced the notion of trying to get under the first apron and being able to sign a $10 to $13 million free agent, giving our roster some optionality with this non-taxpayer mid-level exception. All right. So the math behind that, I'm just reviewing what we did 2 videos ago, is that we would peg Klay's contract to match Draymond. And in doing that, we would also redo Gary Payton's contract, and we'd have to get off of Looney's contract to squeeze enough below the first apron to then also be able to use this non-taxpayer mid-level, which I obviously suggested possibly Kyle Anderson. And this was contingent on Klay accepting a contract of 24 million or so. Now, as we know, Gary Payton II, he opted in to his $9 million contract. So now you're in a situation where this whole strategy doesn't even work anymore because Gary Payton's 9 million is now preventing you from this particular idea. But it also kind of tells me that if the negotiations with Klay with Orlando were yielding a number that's close to 24 million, then why didn't the Warriors just go ahead and try to make this happen? That's why I think whatever Orlando has offered to Klay, it's going to be something north of 24 million. In Bobby Marks's insider article the other day, this one, he says that the deal that he would offer Klay is 2 years, 70 million. So when I read that, things started to make sense because that would be consistent with the whole strategy of the NTMLE not working. So now I'm thinking, well, what if we offered Klay not 35 million a year, as in the Bobby Marks article, but 33 million a year, but over 3 years for 100 million. And the problem with this is that we would be near the first apron, as you can see down here. So we're not near the second apron and its restrictive penalties, but there's not much else we can do with this roster. And I tend to think that not many NBA general managers run it back with pretty much the same roster as last year, unless you won the championship. For example, the Boston Celtics probably aren't making any major changes to their roster this year. When the Warriors won the championship in 2018 with Kevin Durant, there wasn't much change needed on the squad, and we won the 2018 championship. Now, you look at Orlando, the other reason why the 35 million per year for 2 years or around 30-ish makes sense is because if you look at Orlando's cap sheet, and there's a lot of cap space. I read that it's like 50 million. So they can definitely afford to say overpay Klay, because I'm just not sure that many people think that Klay deserves the 35 million. But in this video, I want you to think differently. And I actually do think Klay deserves it, but it takes a different perspective and frame of mind to think that. I know that Malik Monk just re-signed with Sacramento for what seems to be a below market rate, 4 years, 78 million. That's not even 20 million a year. But when there's one team that's an awesome fit for Klay, and I will discuss this in greater detail in a separate video coming up as we discuss the fit of Klay with Orlando, when they're starting Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, and Wendell Carter. Guess who plays the shooting guard 2/3? It's either Jonathan Isaac or actually Gary Harris started the last game in game 7 against Cleveland. And I think I would start Klay Thompson over Gary Harris or Jonathan Isaac if I'm Orlando. He fits in perfectly. In fact, Eric G of NBA Draft Net hopped on board our live stream the other day and really helped explain it all. So I'm going to put a little link in the description and a card right here for you to check that one out because we're just going to expound on that a little bit. Now, Anthony Slater came out with his article yesterday, and this has a very negative connotation. So have been the reactions on social media to this. Obviously, you've heard some of the wording. Nothing is currently on the table. There hasn't been productive discussion. Talks are essentially frozen. A calculated business approach can come off cold to Klay. And you get the reactions of, oh, how could they possibly treat Klay like this? Well, I want to just reel that back a little bit. Now, obviously, there's also the report here that Kevon Looney will get his guarantee on the 8 million. And that kind of again goes in line with the whole idea of having the non-taxpayer mid-level exception idea kind of blown to pieces with Gary Payton opting in at 9 million. But back to Slater's article, first of all, there's been some lack of journalism out there. Aggregators are saying, they keep saying, oh, Tim McMahon said on Windhorst's podcast that, oh, Klay was offered 2 years. No, in that podcast, if you listen to it, Tim McMahon is actually referencing Shams and Slater's report from December that the Warriors had offered Klay 48 million over 2 years at the beginning of the season. So this has just led to a lot of outrage on social media. The thing is I would like for you to consider that if indeed Orlando is poised to offer Klay like the 35 million, or before Bobby Marks said the $70 million mark at 2 years, he actually said 30 million. What I'm thinking is Lacob and Dunleavy already know that the number is going to be around 30, 33, 35 million. So why bother with that right now when Orlando's not technically supposed to have made the offer yet? If you were to negotiate with Klay right now, then it would become a bidding war. Lacob would say, okay, well, why don't we offer you 33 million for 3 years instead of 35 per year for 2 years? Then Klay goes back to Orlando and says, oh, he said this. So then Orlando keeps upping it. Now we know Orlando's not crazy. Like, why would they offer the entire cap space of 50 million? There's got to be a reason why Bobby Marks thinks that an offer of 70 million for 2 years for Klay is a good idea. So I'm just saying that for Lacob not to engage Klay right now, that's the right negotiation strategy, because you don't want to get in a situation where suddenly it becomes a bidding war. So once free agency starts, get your offer from Orlando, make sure you got the final offer from them, and then we'll give you our offer. I mean, to me, this is just the smart thing to do. I know that Klay unfollowed the Warriors. He followed Paulo Banchero. He deleted, apparently, a championship photo in the locker room in Boston with Steph Curry. And he changed his profile pic. But I'll tell you what, now, my links into Klay's camp, they reminded me that the profile pic before this had Klay in a Team USA shirt. With Klay working out with Team Bahamas, which I hope you've heard by now. I've been told that they were having this training camp in Houston, And so Klay also was in Japan recently, this post. So from what I've gathered, because I found it surprising that Klay would react to social media on any given day, but it wasn't any given day. It was on the plane ride to Japan. So when you have like extra time available, it wasn't a situation where he just got all uptight on social media. What I gather is that he needed to change his profile pic to give it sort of a Bahamas feel. And he needed to retire the Team USA profile pic. And so that's really all that was. Now, following Paulo, unfollowing the Warriors, deleting the picture in the locker room with Steph, those are a little bit, indicative of some kind of a strategy and things of that nature. But I think it's just a tad overblown in terms of like the guy was on a flight that took several hours to get to Japan. So he had the free time to do all this stuff on Instagram. Okay. But overall, I want you to also consider one thing. If we pay Klay like 30-ish million, that really constricts our options. And as I said, the fit with Orlando, man, what a great time to be alive for Klay, right? It just so happens this young team plays very good defense. He doesn't need to worry about his own individual defense as compared to the Warriors. They have a lot of cap space. They need a shooter. There is a starting spot. Like all of the stars have aligned for Klay with Orlando. And again, it only takes one team to quote unquote set the market price. I want everybody to remember Andre Iguodala when he re-signed with the Warriors. He went and talked to the Sacramento Kings to get a $16 million figure from the Kings, which then he used to negotiate with Joe Lacob. So this kind of thing, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. With Klay, man, the stars aligned. So what I've given you is sort of just a positive way to think about the current Klay situation. And I got a mean tweet for the last thing that I did on Twitter where I said, why hasn't anybody mentioned Bobby Marks saying that the salary that Orlando might offer is like 2 years, 70 million? And somebody snapped back at me on that saying, oh, no way is anybody playing Klay that much. But I don't really have a problem, so to speak, with that person because I just know that when you doom scroll and when you log on to Twitter, it activates your beta brainwaves and you're likely to get more of a super alert state and highly competitive. And believe me, I wanted to snap back at the guy, but I realized that I was on the social media app and that I was really kind of in a competitive atmosphere suddenly. And I'm not here to really go with that vibe. So I want you guys to remember to keep an open mind. After all, that's what Joe Mazzulla has been saying all season long with his championship Celtics. Here's a little snippet of that.
A lot from the first 6 minutes. From a negative standpoint, we can learn a ton from the next 42 minutes from a positive standpoint. So just keep an open mind about learning, about getting better and competing.
Keep an open mind. That's what we do here at Let's Go Warriors. Not everything always has to be, oh, the Warriors frozen talks with Klay. Oh, they're not respecting a franchise legend. And I'm not here to be right or wrong. I'm just here to make sure that you keep an open mind and don't always have to approach these issues with such competitive fire and outrage. So I could be wrong. Everyone else could be right. And maybe the market is depressed and, everything that Slater said in his article. Okay. I don't really care. A lot of people take something they see, some news report, and turn it into a negative. After all, I'm going to end on this note because here's Klay from November 26, 2021, Do you guys remember this? He was there on the bench with a towel over his head. And this was the culmination of feeling really down for not being able to play the game that he loves due to catastrophic torn ligaments and tendons in succession. So there's Klay feeling a little down, and there's Dub Nation lifting him up. And the way I look at this now is like, if indeed Orlando is prepared to drop a huge contract like 35 million a year for 2 years, good for him. Trust me. I want Klay to retire as a Warrior, of course. After all, I wore the Warriors jersey here and the cap for good luck to kind of, balance out the unfortunate thumbnail that I chose there with him in an Orlando jersey. But if he ends up with Orlando after all this, I tip my hat. And Orlando's probably suddenly my favorite Eastern Conference team to root for, right? So I hope you enjoyed this. It's just a different way to look at things. Keep an open mind out there. Try to be careful about spending too much time on social media apps where you can instantly thumb type your immediate reaction to things. I hope I've given you facts and data and other things to support a more positive outlook on what's happening with Klay. And I hope that by the time I upload this video, no other huge news has dropped, such as some kind of a trade for the Warriors, which again is going to be hard to do. And we'll do a video coming up in the next few days of the conundrum of Andrew Wiggins in terms of being able to move pieces. And the salary cap sheet kind of tells us that we seem to be stuck, but of course I could be wrong. So thank you all. Let's go Warriors, and I'll see you in the next one.